As always, thanks so much for clicking on this video. Thanks for joining us today. I am very excited to talk about your summer classes, how to crush your summer classes. I have a couple of previous videos that go more in depth with my study approach for accounting classes, and you can click those probably here or here and explore those a little bit more. But today I specifically want to talk about my approach for those 6-week, those 12-week accelerated spring and summer courses. The primary problem with summer courses is time. A normal class, you may have 16 to 18 weeks to study for. That gives you plenty of time, the coursework is spread out, and there's really no rush if you keep up on the material. And so the issue with using some of these methods like spaced repetition in those videos that I previously made is that you have less time to essentially space out your repetition. And you really have to stay on top of things in order to effectively space out your repetition and give your brain that time to accumulate the information. Basically, how the brain works and what science tells us about the brain is that over time, you can space out the repetition of learning certain types of material. And the way you want to do that is through recall. You want to force your brain to have to recall the answer to the information that you want to know. And so the way that I do this typically is writing questions about the various types of content that I'm interested in. We could go way more in depth on this, but for now, we'll just leave that there. Again, if you're interested in this content, just go check out some of my previous videos. But if you're still with me, let's get into some more detail here about how this is really going to work. Okay, my very first tip for you, specifically for summer classes, is you need to identify how the professor is going to test you. What do I mean by this? What I have found in certain classes is that the professor is basing their exam questions off of certain sets of sub-questions in the material. This is going to be different for each class, and so this is why I bring this up first. You're going to need to figure out if the professor is basing their exam questions off the end of chapter questions. Are they basing it off of their PowerPoint? What source material are they using to sort of build out their exam, and what format should you expect on the exam? This is like the number one problem that I think that you should work to solve immediately. I would be asking the professor about this on the very first day so that you know what kinds of problems you're going to be facing. The thing is, even if you memorize all of the concepts in the chapter, if you aren't familiar with how the problems are going to be put together on the exam, you're going to be quite inefficient when it comes to exam time. And I think when you're inefficient in the exam, you start to stress out a little bit and you begin to struggle through things. And so you want to know exactly what to expect, if possible, on the exam. To illustrate this point a little bit, I had I think it was a master's level course once where we had PowerPoint slides and we had the textbook. And for some reason I thought, okay, I'm not even going to worry about these PowerPoint slides. I'm just going to go right to the textbook. I'm going to make up all my flashcards right off the textbook material, and I'm just going to commit to devouring this material and essentially memorizing it. To this day, I'm not sure why I thought that was a great idea, but that's exactly what I did. And as you might expect, I completely bombed the first exam. The professor based all of her exam questions off of the PowerPoint slides. Those exam questions were kind of formatted in the way that she wrote her own personal slides. And so for me to study off the textbook, I wasn't ready for the format that she was going to test me in. And so it's so important for you to learn how the professor is going to test you and in what way, and get used to the phrasing of their questions and understand what sort of longer problems you're going to see. All of these details, the more that you can become familiar with not only the information but the format, you're going to be so much better prepared for the exam when the exam comes. The second tip I would give you is, once you know how the professor is going to test you and the format of their questions, you need to adjust your studying accordingly. Now, this kind of gets into some gray zone. I can't exactly tell you how to do this for each class because I think that each class is a little bit different. But if the professor responds and says, hey, the multiple choice at the end of the chapter, those are key. You're going to see a lot of questions like that. Or the PowerPoint slides, I draw all of the info for my exams off of the PowerPoint slides. If you're getting any information like that, I would highly suggest that you tailor your studying activities to those particular materials. So again, if they're saying the multiple choice questions at the end of the chapter, that's what's important, I would be making a huge deck of all of those multiple choice questions, and I would just be pounding those over and over and over and over again. That's not to say that you should ignore other material, but in terms of where you're putting the bulk of your time, I think that you'd be wise to pay attention to what the prof's saying and sort of tailor your efforts accordingly. Now, I know some accounting classes, especially like intermediate 1 and 2, are very problem heavy. and even beyond like multiple choice. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of writing, a lot of calculations. The thing is, some of these classes just take a tremendous amount of work, but the same methods apply here. Like I know for myself, Intermediate 1 and Intermediate 2, those classes are heavily problem-based. Anyone who has taken them knows that you're just working problems over and over and over again. And so you're gonna have to commit a lot of time to work those problems, but the methods are still the same. You still space the repetition out over time, and you still are using that recall method. You're forcing your brain to recall how to do this problem. And there might be 5 steps to the problem that you have to recall, but at the same time, that is just what needs to be learned. Accounting is not easy, and it can be very challenging to learn all those steps, but regardless, the methods still apply. So if you're dealing with a lot of problems, for myself, I write down all of the potential practice problems, might even be 50 plus for an exam or even more than that. And then I just start running them over and over and over and over and over again. It wasn't uncommon for me before an exam to have 50 sheets of paper that I had just been working problems on again and again and again and again. So I hope that helps. My third tip for summer classes is keep in mind the timeline. You only have maybe 6 weeks or 12 weeks to take this class. And so if you get into the class 5 days, well, you probably have an exam in about another week. And so there isn't really that room for error or dilly-dallying. In a typical class, like you could basically sleep for a month and you'd be completely fine. You wake up, study for a week for your exam, you'd be good to go. In these classes, you do have to be on the ball. I don't think they need to take over your life necessarily, but you do need to be quite focused and putting in the time, most likely every day, a few hours, to glean the information that you need to sort of get for the exam. Finally, I would say that studying by yourself is going to be the best bang for your buck in these summer classes. I know that sometimes people like to get together in groups and study, and that can work if everyone is studying in a solo sort of fashion. But generally speaking, and again, I guess just for myself in particular, I find it to be the most efficient when I'm just studying by myself. Do with that what you will, but that is just another tip I would throw out there for you to consider. I'm actually finishing up a summer class right now as we speak, and this is the exact method that I'm using. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or anything else to add, just drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear how you are tackling your summer classes, if you'd add anything to this, or if you need help, just drop a comment down below with what you're struggling with, and I'd love to chat. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been a complete blast so far. There's been a ton of momentum since we hit 100 subscribers, and honestly, it just seems like we're flying along now. So thanks for everyone who subscribed, and I'm excited for what's ahead. Peace.